As a child, I grew up in an environment with men. I had a couple of aunts, and most of them had husbands. And my uncles, they were around, as well as my stepfathers. My own father was not a part of my life. So, but my environment was basically filled with men.
Men and violence is a complex issue because we cannot talk to men and violence outside of the purview of how men are socialized and how children are socialized. And lots of times when the work will be done with men, we sometimes see where it's the impact of their socialization, sometimes childhood issues and childhood aversive experiences that would have pushed them to violence. Not to say that they have the right to be violent, but lots of times when you check the thread and you connect the dots, that what brings them to that point, we see it not only as a masculinity problem, but a socialization problem.
I saw things like, we go to work, we come home, everybody's got a job, we party, we get a wife, a woman, whichever one you want to put, and, you grow up and this is the image that you would want to think of, that you grow up and you become.
Masculinity is learned attitudes and engendered behavior. And it forms a pattern based on how persons are socialized and how they are able to express themselves.
In terms of having a conflict, I found it very difficult to deal with. I don't know how to deal with that. And when I look around in my environment, there wasn't much of anybody telling you how to deal with that. Growing up, violence was one of the ways that men dealt with relationships. Right. You would hear it, you would see it, it was a part of my home. And so, in that way, when you get really upset, somebody with an anger issue obviously will need to find a way to release. And yes, in my relationship, it did get to that point.
And so when you see the violence really is a symptom of some dysfunctional idea of what a gender role or a masculine role is. And that in itself is learned behavior.
From my end, I need to figure a way how I could deal with this. So going in to look for counseling and at the church, at the human service, going for different kinds of therapy at the psychologist as well. And it was just by a fluke that I came across Help and Shelter. Because I thought, these people are dealing with women, and I don't know if they got no problem for men, so I might as well try to find out.
The perpetrator program is something I'm always excited to talk about, being because of my involvement. From the beginning, to really give you an idea of how it came into being, it's simply because the services that we offer are free counseling to women who are victims and survivors of violence. What our counselors over time recognize is that they're offering these services to women, and there was nothing that they were doing with the perpetrators. And what would have happened is that the court started to send both the victim and the perpetrator for counseling. And we kind of started to fill the gap by dealing with the men exclusively. Because what had happened is that lots of times when there's violence in a relationship, even if there's a split up between the two persons, the perpetrator and the victim or the survivor, sometimes they get back together. And if work is only done with the survivor, then it leaves a gap there. So we started to fill that gap. So the women and the men will be referred by the court if the magistrate sees that there is a kind of a reconciliation agenda there. They would send them to us. So our counselors would take them through their counseling, the series of counseling sessions. And then the men started coming. We started ad hoc working with these men. The program evolved so from that point where we even have a structured way how we engage them. But we started out just talking with them, giving them an opportunity to speak, to be heard, and speaking with them as opposed to speaking to them.
Coming to Help and Shelter, the atmosphere was different. I think if you describe it as some amount of therapy, because you get to talk, and then you get to listen to other men, and then you are taught, and then you're given an opportunity to implement, to think about, and to implement what you would have learned. And I think that was what was very, very impactful for me, because going back home, sometimes I would sit and discuss with my wife, I learned this today. And she was like, wow. So you're going back next week, right? And she encouraged me.
We have coined our strategy as convo therapy. But basically, and we have some really stringent guidelines in this convo therapy, is that we hold men to strict accountability, principles of accountability for their actions, and we look at the re-education.
I was able to develop control and learn how to deal with anger management.
The program is the single entry point for any man who has an issue with violence, especially intimate partner violence. And we take them through 7 weeks of engagements, which is based on their education. And then we introduce the re-education, because we have to always visit their ideas of what their roles are, what influence their ideas of what their roles are, what their socialization process and their socialization track was like, what their childhood was like.
The gender-based violence, the situation that we would have learned about, the education pertaining to that, helped me greatly. It's like therapy. You get an opportunity to talk, to listen, to learn, to act, to implement what you would have learned.
To find solutions across the board, we have to involve men. We have to demand that they be accountable, and we have to help them to review what masculinity should be.
I learned how to deal with anger, to control, how to listen to my spouse, how to when she's at this point or that point, you get to learn how to read the relationship and respond. Instead of just reacting, you respond. And I'm able to, personally, listening was one of my problems as well. So it wasn't just anger management, it was, listen, and you get vexed when you don't hear the right thing.
The men come in, lots of times they come in kicking and screaming they're not supposed to be there because they've done so much for their family, as if it's supposed to compensate for the violence they might have meted out. So accountability is absolutely important. And then because of that view they might have, that their violence should be at least acceptable because of all the other things they do and all the responsibilities they have, then it comes to that they have to examine this core issue of what masculinity is in their context, in their mindset. And therein is when we start to examine the social practices, how it has become a social norm, and why it has become a social norm, and why do they submit to that idea that men are powerful while women are powerless.
From the father to the husband to that, and we're all exposed to gender-based violence, whether we like it or not.
A key light bulb movement for me is when we ask the question of what really is a major problem that men don't respond positively to non-violent practices. And one of the gentlemen said to me, and he was going through the court system because he had been violent to his wife, he said, it's the information we don't have. So key is to examine the information that you do have. And that's where we work from. That's the bottom line we work from. And I think that's the starting point with them, opening them to that conversation, exposing them to what we always coin and what came to evolve as convo therapy. I want to see more prevention work being mainstreamed. I want to see if somebody's selling a drink, there's a message of prevention on the drink bottle. If you're selling me any product, we want to mainstream these messages. That's what we have to do. We have to do poignant, positive, sustained prevention work.